All right, good afternoon, everybody. Frankie here with an update on the tropics and soon-to-be Hurricane Helene here. That's going to be moving up into the Panhandle or possibly the west side of Florida from between about Cedar Key and Tampa. That is where the most favorable area is for landfall. And we now have word that this is going to be making landfall at least as a Category 3 storm now. Earlier we'd said just a Category 2, but rapid intensification is going to occur. And it is not out of the realm of possibility that we see this thing become a Category 4 or 5. It's just either way, whether it's a 3, 4, or 5, it's going to be devastating. So don't take away the fact that Category 3 is it's 2 categories lower. It's still a major hurricane. It's still 115 plus mile per hour winds that are going to cause catastrophic damage. The wind will drive in a storm surge along the coast, and that's very dangerous. We could have storm surge up to 8 feet or possibly higher in some of these areas. We're worrying about if the storm tracks just a little bit further east and ends up hitting Tampa. Could get a lot of water in Tampa Bay there if the storm wobbles just a little bit further to the east. Right now, we think it's going to stay right offshore and then hit the Panhandle for the eastern Panhandle. So that's the forecast. That's really all I have. I'm going to leave you with some new news footage about the situation, and we'll leave it at that. And I'll come back tomorrow or the next day and talk some more about this massive hurricane. And by that time, it will be a massive hurricane, a major hurricane roaring in the Gulf, headed towards the U.S. again for another disaster. So be prepared. Don't be scared. It's better to be prepared and not need it than not be prepared and need it, right? So just prepare. Make sure you're ready for this thing. It's going to be a very long road for these residents. Again, Category 3 hurricane is nothing to sneeze at. And when there's a potential there for it to be even stronger, you wonder if it's gonna, because they started at a Category 1. Then they said it was going to be a Category 2, and then now they're seeing a 3. So are we going to end up at a 4 or 5? I really hope we don't, but I have a bad feeling that the potential is there. So anyway, that's all I have. I have a video for you to watch after I get done talking here. So just watch the video and pay close attention just to all your surroundings and everything like that. Just in general, but here is an update on hurricane, or soon to be Hurricane Helene.
Breaking weather news right now as you and the forecast team and the long range team have made a decision.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Bernie, the more I look at this scenario for this tropical rainstorm, the more and more concerned I am getting. It was the decision at MapDisco this morning to put the landfall now as a Category 3 hurricane. That is a major hurricane just east of Apalachicola, Thursday at 5 p.m. around that time frame. So now we are expecting a major hurricane to make landfall in the Panhandle of Florida on Thursday afternoon.
We'll talk more about the movement. We do have some scenarios. Again, there is room to the west and room to the east of this track, but the big takeaway is a major landfall at a major hurricane at landfall. Let's talk about what we're seeing right now and what you're seeing in the Caribbean off the coast of Nicaragua and Honduras.
Yeah, we're starting to see the storm starting to consolidate around a center. Now, the question still will remain where exactly that center will form, and that may have big ramifications later on as to where the storm does indeed make landfall. So the next 24 hours, I think, are going to be very key to see exactly where this center of circulation does indeed form. The hurricane hunters will be in there later on today to give us that very valuable information that then the models can ingest and hopefully in the next 24 hours give us a much better picture about where this storm will go.
Certainly in the short range, you can see the clouds moving north, so we feel pretty comfortable that this will be somewhere in the northwest Caribbean. Probably a storm by Tuesday afternoon and Tuesday evening. And then, Alex, this goes into the Gulf of Mexico, and things get even more concerning here as far as ingredients. Now, the one thing that you and I were talking about in our forecast team, There is a lot of dry air in the Gulf of Mexico. Could that be the ingredient that is missing that would at least stop this system from rapidly intensifying?
Well, during Francine, going into the western Gulf of Mexico, we did see a lot of that dry air get wrapped into that storm, and that really helped to prevent Francine from becoming a major hurricane. I just don't think this is the same type of situation with this one. This storm is going to have a very large bubble of moisture moving north with it. So as it strengthens, I think it's going to be able to fan out and really push that dry air out away from it, essentially make its own environment as it moves north. So no, I don't think the dry air is going to have a major influence on this storm, and we still expect it to become a major hurricane regardless.
Last week we were worried about wind shear in the Gulf of Mexico, everything we look at now, and you can see our current wind shear product with the light purple. Low wind shear, and that dark purple we think is going to be lessening in the Northwest Caribbean over the next 24 hours. But here's, I know, the ingredient that has you most concerned.
Yeah, it's the ocean heat content. Essentially, it's the depth of that warm water. Now, the Western Caribbean has the highest ocean heat content of the entire Atlantic basin. The 80-degree temperature line extends 300 to 400 feet down below the surface of the ocean. Tropical systems need about 80 degrees Fahrenheit right at the surface to survive and thrive. Now, when you have that water going all the way down, 400 feet down, it just gives a lot more fuel for rapid intensification, and that's why we're concerned that this thing could really rapidly intensify in the Northwest Caribbean and Eastern Gulf of Mexico.
We had a meeting at our map discussion at 9 o'clock to discuss these graphics. Let's talk about the different scenarios, because while we are pointing to just east of Apalachicola, there is some room, Alex, on the western and eastern side. Let's talk about the western side, how there could be a shift farther to the west.
Yeah, we're going to be watching this dip in the jet stream coming down across the Mississippi Valley. Now, if that dip is a little bit stronger, comes a little further south, it can act to pull the storm a little bit further west. So areas like Biloxi, Mobile, those are the areas that need to keep a close eye for any western shifts in this track. Now, on the flip side, if that dip in the jet stream is a little faster, a little more progressive, maybe a little bit weaker, it can kind of stay a little further north and act to steer the system a little bit further east towards the Big Bend area. Now, this current time, the scenario that we're going with is probably somewhere in between those two scenarios. And so we're bringing the storm north as a Category 3 hurricane just east of Apalachicola Thursday evening.
Yeah, and there it is again, the breaking news. Again, you in the forecasting department made the call. We are now forecasting a major hurricane at landfall. And Alex, this will easily be, unfortunately, the strongest hurricane to hit the United States at landfall, the strongest landfalling hurricane so far this season.
Yeah, it will. And we want people, even on the eastern side of the cone, to watch this very carefully.
Yeah.
People in the Tampa Bay area, we want you to watch out for storm surge. Even though the storm may pass very far to the west, the storm can still push a lot of storm surge into the bay. So just because you're not on the center of that track, we want to make sure that you're keeping an eye out for those impacts. The storm surge, this is going to be a very large storm, I think. And so storm surge impacts, rain impacts, wind impacts could extend well beyond the scope of that cone.